Alice in Wonderland. A banana under a microscope. Why did Eve eat the forbidden fruit? Pandora opened the box despite explicitly being told not to. Why? Wait, are all these stories about women? Oh boy. Oh boy. Women. They're all women. Whoa. Get over here. Come on. Okay, so if they're all women, if all these stories are about women, then what are these stories about? Is it specifically female curiosity bad? Because that is concerning, is maybe not. Okay, so step by step. So you have, I feel like the ultimate one is Pandora's box. Pandora is given this box by a god, and a male god, no less, and is told explicitly not to open the box. I guess a single lapse of judgment, she opens it, and the entire world is ruined, and all of history forever being bad is because Pandora opened this fucking box. Hi. Did you know that Pandora's box was actually a jar, and it was mistranslated in the 16th century to box, and now we all think it's box. I didn't have a jar. Other facts about the Pandora's box story. Pandora was the first woman. She was the first human woman, and she was partnered up with Epimetheus, who was Prometheus's brother. Now, Prometheus is known for gifting fire to humanity, and was sort of a forward thinker, and known to be proactive, very, very intelligent and quick on his feet. Epimetheus is the opposite. Epimetheus was perhaps Greek mythology's first himbo, and placing the very first himbo with the very first human woman was actually an inspired decision. But it does reveal more subconscious it does reveal more in this myth that the slower, the late thought, the afterthought, which is what Epimetheus translates, the one who settles down with a woman who is created with all these beautiful traits. Aphrodite gives her deep emotion, and Hermes gives her wit, and Zeus gives her curiosity and a box. And you know, Zeus was really onto something when he thought, you know what women should be? Curious. You know what else women should be? Responsible for the caretaking of all evil in the universe, and if they fuck up even one time, it feels like women were sort of set up to fail here when the first human woman is set up with curiosity and then a container that, if she behaves curiously towards, that it's going to ruin everything and that she'll get blamed for it forever. And of course, she has this dumb man. If she'd have had a smart husband, perhaps we could have all been saved the trouble. But of course, that discussion isn't really happening, or it has never really happened, because you've probably never even heard of Epimetheus. You've probably never heard of Epimetheus until this exact moment. What does that say? I don't know. I'm sure it won't be relevant anytime soon. Anyway, back to my studies. So maybe that's sort of like a bad example. Okay, so then we think about Adam and Eve.
Adam and Eve, like the original story, right? Eve eats the forbidden fruit because she is not curious, but tempted. She's tempted by the snake, whereas Adam calmly accepts the fruit from his partner, which is fine.
It's not like he doesn't know what the fruit is. Like, it's the forbidden fruit. It's in the middle of the garden. It's all these things. So it's not like, oh, I've never seen this before. I wonder what kind of strange fruit she's brought me for lunch today. He obviously knows what it is, and he just accepts it without fuss. If you think about Eve and you think about why Satan would have to tempt Eve versus tempting Adam and then having Adam give it to Eve, perhaps Eve wouldn't have taken it from Adam. Perhaps Eve would not have accepted the fruit from Adam, whereas Satan knew that Adam would accept it from Eve because Adam was more gullible. So why, between Adam and Eve, would it be exclusively Eve's fault that we got kicked out of the garden? Sexism. Little side thought. This is fresh off the dome. I didn't plan on talking about this. There's a really interesting paper about how men created sexism out of a sense of jealousy for women because women have an innate ability to create things that men do not have. A woman in just aging develops the ability to make something, to make a child, to make a life, to create with her own body something brand new. And men do not have that ability, so we are jealous and we try to dominate the world, try to make everything in our image because we lack the innate ability to create something. And I'm thinking on the story of Adam and Eve. Eve is created from the rib of Adam, and that is a form of creation from one's own body that men do not actually have in real life. But for the purpose of the story, Adam got to create Eve, but still is not held responsible for the malfeasances that Eve is credited for. Unlike the responsibility that women often have for the behaviors of their children.
Hey, I forgot to put my tooth in, so I've been living like this for like a year. This is just what I look like. That was wrong. Generally, it is considered the sin of Adam. Now, they both sinned. They both have like the fall of Eve and the fall of Adam. But if we're talking full picture, talk about the sin of Adam. Now, they do that because of like patriarchy, basically. And it's like there to be of one flesh is a line in Genesis, but also, you know, if you're to extract why that would be the case, it's like the Adam is Eve's keeper, is Eve's like representative. And there's several websites and articles I found that cite that as the reason for it being called the sin of Adam, which I find incredibly frustrating because it's like, oh wait, they're actually giving fault to Adam, was my initial impression. I'm like, oh well, I've been wrong this whole time. I made this assumption, but no, it is because like Adam is responsible for the sins of Eve, not because Eve is her own person making mistakes, but because Adam, regardless of what he has done, is to be held responsible for what Eve has done because he is her fucking dad, I guess. I mean, technically, sort of, like, she came from his body. Weird vibe. Anyway, so the sin of Eve, no one really calls it, like, the sin of Eve. It's only the sin of Adam, and, yeah, that's just something that I was completely wrong about. Give me just a second to, yeah, I made that up completely. It seems that Jordan Peterson called it the sin of Eve, and then let's listen to this.
Meaning is actually the instinct that emerges to signify, in your terminology, the proper their association with the serpent in the Garden of Eden, as well as women really do provide a critical mirror for men.
I watched the whole thing. He doesn't even really talk about it, to be honest. Like, they talk about the serpent and the creation of Eve through Adam, but they don't talk about the sin and why it should be contextualized as the sin of Eve instead of the sin of Adam. I don't know why he would say that, but it does seem that the right-wing presumption is that Eve is at fault. But then I don't know. Look, just I'm right. They're wrong. Okay, I'm the only person who's ever been right. Just listen to me. Give me money on Patreon. Bye.
The play Polybius, and the person sort of who gives into the temptation to play Polybius is also the female character. Alice in Wonderland feels obvious. She's curious about a rabbit. Is it bad for women to be curious? Is it bad for women to hold knowledge? According to these stories, yes. According to how we view history, I think yes, which is fucked. Because when we talk about curiosity of men, we talk about great curiosity. We talk about discovering new worlds. We talk about inventions and genius scientists. Albert Einstein once said that the only thing that was different about him that he was insatiably curious, and he's Albert fucking Einstein, whereas Beatrix Potter
Did you really think I was going to film in public? You know there are children in the children's section of the library? Beatrix Potter, famously known for her Peter Rabbit children's book series, was also a amateur mycologist. That's a mushroom scientist. But because of the era she was practicing in, she was largely discredited as a legitimate scientist, so she pivoted to having an illustrious illustration career in children's books. And for that being Plan B, she did pretty well for herself. Her passion was in ecology, was in studying the world and essentially being a biologist. She was a woman. She couldn't go to school for that type of thing. She didn't receive any academic or scientific credits. Even though she had peers in the field, she was not accepted by the field she wanted to study in, by the field that she excelled in. Well, frankly, it's just kind of fucked up.
And maybe I'm not the person to talk about this. Maybe somebody else should have gotten to the bottom of this. Maybe someone that was a woman. So who am I to tell you about this? A guilty party, I suppose. What do we do? What do I do? What do I do? What does anybody do? How do we pivot from here, where it seems that our entire structure of society and knowledge keeping is centered around keeping people that aren't men, particularly white men,
Identification, please.
to keep all the knowledge from everyone else. So we have things like scholarly articles being behind paywalls and all these things where there's structures keeping knowledge away from people that we don't want to have it. So how do we undo that? And I don't really know if there's an easy answer. So I guess I'm a little stressed because I feel like maybe what I was complaining about last year when I tried to make the Dark Side of Curiosity video, that maybe I was participating in toxic masculinity, in seeing knowledge as a burden because I was keeping knowledge within myself instead of sharing it with people in my life, particularly the women in my life, particularly my partner, particularly my wife, who was behind the camera and smiling at me. Oh God! So it's kind of just nice to like be outside and not Yes, Ghost Wife, you have a question.
What about like all of Candide? Because aren't you coming to the same conclusion as Candide?
Tell me about it.
So, essentially Candide explores like philosophy, and more specifically it follows religion, but people ask these big, great questions and then they spend their entire life like anguishing over them and like rationalizing them away, like being like, oh, well this is God's will, or life will be perfect if we do this, or this is the greatest of all possible worlds, or anyway, they explore all these thought-provoking ideas and come up with thought-provoking answers. The end of Candide basically ends with the author more or less directly addressing the reader, saying that really the only way out of these toils is to touch grass and like maybe grow a vegetable, and don't worry about all of that.
So you're saying all these, I assume it's a bunch of dumbass men.
Yes.
That a bunch of dumbass men invent a bunch of brain problem questions
And a bunch of brain problem answers.
And a bunch of brain problem answers, and devise all these complex systems of society and philosophy and all this shit. And then the solution is to do precisely what I'm doing. Be outside, touch grass, maybe grow a vegetable.
Yeah, it's kind of the answer to like men's woes, is to just go outside.
The answer to men's woes is to touch grass.
And touch grass.
And that's advice from you, a woman.
Yeah.
I think a problem that I always have is that it's always very simple. Like, it winds up being about communication. It winds up being about, why don't you take a walk? It winds up being about drink water, or like just basic shit that you're supposed to do automatically. Yet somehow, when you get so lost in these systems, when you get so lost in the stratification of society and blah, 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 that you forget we're supposed to go outside. I thought a good place to hide away would be the campus of Smith College, a historically women's university. I try to be very, very careful of spaces like this because there aren't very many of them. There aren't very many spaces that are dedicated to letting women be curious, letting women learn in their own spaces at their own pace. Yet here I am. I don't think it'd be difficult to find out I go here. And I have, I don't know, sometimes I feel guilty about it, and sometimes I feel like I've sort of invaded this sort of like, this feminine knowledge-seeking space, because the master's program is non-preferential in terms of gender, but the entire undergrad, you can be anybody as long as you're not a cis man. And so when I walk into classes sometimes, I do catch some looks. I do catch some looks from people who have very good arguments that I should not be in there. I stress a lot about making sure that I am not a significant presence in classrooms, because I am deeply concerned that I'm going to take away from this opportunity for women to study whatever the fuck they want without. So when we walked up, there were two women sitting on that bench over there, and we waited for them to finish talking, and they sort of just, they walked off to do the rest of the day, and then while we were filming, two old dudes who, I don't know what business they had here, but they picked literally 15 feet from where we're filming to like sit down and have a normal level conversation. They just kept talking while someone clearly and like loudly talking about like women being underrepresented in sometimes God's funny, guys. God's funny, you know? But you know what's not funny? The state of my bank account. Please save me. Install Brelly. We're going for the guilt. Guilt is the strategy today. We're going for guilt. It's free to you and it pays me. Just do it. Who cares? Just do it. It's purple. It's nice. You won't even notice it unless you're using it. And it helps save you money on things that you see advertised on YouTube. Like, I don't know, Boxu or Squarespace or whatever bullshit you want. Do you realize how high up my camera has to be to get this far away from me? It's taller than I am. Oh man. I'm not food. Okay, let's try it again. That was good though.
Do you want me to go down?
No, you did it perfectly.
Oh, okay.
You did it perfectly. It's just having to take.
Oh, okay.